Our next one is Nina Adi. Nina, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Nina Deeb. Ontario had a debt of $337 billion in 2018. Current outlook 2024-2025 puts this debt to $429 billion. That's an increase of $92 billion. $21 billion was added this year alone. From page 135 of the Housing Starts formula, including additional residential units, student housing, long-term care beds, and retirement homes. This is creative calculating. I object to the reworking that is being counted as a home with every budget. This covers up that housing starts are declining. Ontario Place Therma lease is an excellent deal for Therma. The people of Ontario will never see any returns on the $2.237 billion of spending. The Auditor General revealed the present value of rent only amounts to $163 million of the total $1.1 billion of rent. This does not cover the interest payments on the money that the province borrowed. Even if the tenant were to prepay the rent, that still leaves a debt of over $2 billion. Interest to borrow $2 billion over 95 years. I've included the chart for you. I will not go over it. I use the rates from page 180 in the budget. This lease traps the Crown in arbitration with the tenant. That's Schedule D. The tenant is in a position to extract penalties from the Crown by arbitration. Page 66 and 65 of the Ontario Audit Report reveals that Infrastructure Ontario agreed to pay a $30 million penalty for not providing interim utility service required by Therma without first agreeing on what was needed to meet this obligation. This deadline is within the one-year cure period of December 31st this year. Infrastructure Ontario told the auditor it's expected the discussions will conclude by this same date. December 31st is too late to stop talking. This is within 15 days. The lease released October 3rd, 2024 is not the original lease. The original lease was signed the previous year under a different ministry and is dated July 29th, 2021. I'd like to see a copy of this lease. The current lease must be cancelled. We're within 15 days. We're going to incur very heavy penalties, and it is not a good deal for the taxpayers. The $3 billion credit to taxpayers could cost taxpayers an additional $1.47 to $3.6 billion in interest over 10 years. We do not know what interest rates will be in the future. This is similar to taking a $3 billion cash advance on a credit card with no plans of repaying it. Trade lanes are federal, bike lanes are municipal. Each government must stay in their own lane to avoid collisions. No elected official should be surprised by another elected official from a different level of government driving straight at them. Bike lanes are a solution to traffic congestion. Modern planning designs that they be accessible for emergency vehicles. This is municipally funded infrastructure. These are local decisions. Bike lanes save lives. The data exists. There's a human cost to removing bike lanes. The government find it necessary to insulate themselves from lawsuits reveals that the government knows that their idea is fatal. The decision to close 10 supervised consumption sites is harmful. This action will lead to an increase in overdose deaths. This action, removing the sites, will not remove the overdoses. The overdoses will occur in public places. The sites ease the pressure on our emergency responses. A 911 call is responded to by police, fire, and paramedics. We do not want to go backwards. We've found a better way forward. Are there too many nonprofits? No, some of them are legitimate. Permitting P3 corporations under Ontario's nonprofit network is not appropriate. These NGO corporations were severed from the Ministry of Consumer Services. They're extremely wealthy monopoly corporations that are defunding Canada, Ontario, municipalities, and individuals. These corporations run the law for profit by arbitration while avoiding taxation on the billions of dollars they collect a year. When adjusted to population, Ontario has the lowest housing starts in history. Housing is the excuse for intervention, yet the new tools were not used to include the affordable housing component that municipalities requested. The auditor report on ministerial zoning orders reveals that the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing made MZOs instead of MZOs, which were introduced in 2020. The ministry had housing enabling tools but did not use them. Housing is provincial jurisdiction. The province downloads its housing responsibility to the municipalities and chooses to fine those that they have failed. It is housing that prevents homelessness. We should be building housing. I request $60 billion be downloaded to the municipalities who have the responsibility for this housing in order to make them whole and to meet their housing goals. The municipalities should be treated as partners in our housing ambitions and goals. Thank you for having me here today. I do look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. That concludes the presentations. We'll now start the questions, and with the official opposition, MPP Fife.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to all presenters. Really good points made by all. Anita, I'm just going to start with you because I cannot believe that the Minister of Infrastructure signed this lease. The Therma Ontario deal, the 95-year lease, I think is going to join the ranks of the 407 as one of the worst deals ever signed, supposedly on behalf of the people of Ontario. And I have to say, I mean, listening to delegations from healthcare in particular and housing and mental health, the fact that we're subsidizing a European spa company to the tune of $2.2 billion is just astounding to me from a priorities perspective. I wanted to give you the opportunity, because you've given us the chart, but the top 3 concerns that you have with the lease, and please be succinct if you could. Thank you. Go ahead.
The top concern I have with the lease is the Crown being trapped in arbitration by the tenant. So the Schedule D, which is an arbitration, is dispute resolution. Courts are not available unless the tenant gives us permission to use a court. So the tenant's in control of whether the courts are available to the Crown, which is absurd. I've never seen anything like this in my life.
I totally agree. And what's your second one?
The second one is the parking provisions, which was Infrastructure Ontario's idea for the public to fund that, because Therma originally, in the report, it also said that Therma originally put in their submission that they would fund their own parking, but Infrastructure Ontario wanted us to fund it. So that's costing us over $400 million.
Thank you. And then the third one?
The third one would be the not having control over the public areas. So if we want to build above grade on the public realm, we need their permission to do so.
Imagine that. Imagine being absolutely in control, having the public asset, having the waterfront, knowing how valuable it is, and then essentially giving all of your power away to a corporation who will trap you into a 95-year lease. It really is quite something. So you've asked this committee to advocate for the cancellation of this deal. The fee, there's a penalty for that. Walk us through the penalty.
The penalty is $30 million, and we actually have, in my opinion, we have until December 31st this year to cancel this lease, even though there's wording regarding the first permit. I think that the December 31st could trigger an early beginning because of the trickery in the wording in the lease. So that December 31st is a vital date.
Thank you. And then just one final point is that, you know, the Auditor General in her report a week and a half ago indicated that taxpayers end up paying the price for MZOs. And ultimately, you know, everyone's very fond of saying there's one taxpayer, but it really does come down to, you know, really sticking it to the citizens when you bypass our democracy, in our opinion. So thank you for providing the numbers. The interest payments alone will wreck the entire healthcare system for whatever we're fighting for here, right?
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to move on to Nina. Nina, thank you for being here, and thank you for calling out that housing starts have not been this low since 1955, I believe it is. In particular, I want to thank you for pointing out also all the intricacies of this quote-unquote deal with Therme. But I did want to ask, at the same time as the Therme deal, the government passed legislation allowing them to commit acts of misrepresentation, misfeasance, breach of trust, and bad faith without any consequences. What does that say to you as an Ontarian, that the government is allowing themselves to do such things, and they don't want any sort of repercussions for doing so?
That indicates to me that something wrong is going on, and I've read all the reports that have come out on Therma, from the lease to the ministerial zoning orders to the Ontario Auditor report. So things were not, no one's waterfront was treated the way that our waterfront was treated. All other waterfronts that it was compared to used a procurement process. It wasn't treated as a real estate transaction. And for it to be treated as a real estate transaction, I came to committee and asked for a copy of the lease, and it was not given to me. It should have been provided because it was a real estate transaction, and I'm a represented party, so it should have been provided when I asked for it. I don't know what my obligations are as a taxpayer when I don't know what's been signed on our behalf. So that was it's very concerning that everything has been done in it's a different process every which way you look at it. I've never seen anything like this lease, including the 407 deal.
You know, it's I think in terms of obligations of every Ontarian household, it's around $400 that's being paid towards this Austrian elite spa.